Welcome to the Millionaire Race podcast, where we empower you to maximize your potential in order to better your financial standing. Why? So that collectively we can solve most of the socio-economic problems that face the African American demographic today. My name is Toxio Gunyami, your host, and as always, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Please like and subscribe to the show so that you can get alerts when new episodes are uploaded. And if you need to reach us, if you'd like to be on the show, have comments or questions or anything you'd like us to elaborate on, you can reach us by emailing us at toxy@themillrace.com. That's Toxy, Toksy, at themillrace, THEMILRACE.com. Last week, we completed the 9th and final episode in the 531 Method for Financial Success series. It's a very important group of episodes, so if you haven't heard them, I would highly encourage you to go back and do so at leisure. In fact, it's a series that you can always go back to from time to time to refresh yourself on the various topics that we believe are necessary for all of us to attain financial success. As I mentioned during the series, we just briefly touched on each of the topics that make up the 531 method. We'll be going in depth on each of those items. In fact, the 531 method makes up everything that we talk about on the show. So going forward, we'll always be referring back to one item or the other. And of course, like we always say, if you have any questions in particular, send us an email and we'll help clarify it either to you directly or on the air. That being said, we have a very special guest for you today. Not only has this guest run the Millionaire Race, but they're going to share in depth today on one of the items of the 531 method. He'll be talking to us about the budget. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Walter Bell. So I'm here with my good friend Walter. And today we'll be diving a little deeper into talking about a few things, but mainly about the budget, because a budget is essential in your journey towards financial success. It's especially important if you want to run and win the Millionaire Race. So, Walter, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Just to get us started, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Walter Bell. I live in Norcross, Atlanta area with my wife and 2 kids. I'm a member of Victory Church, and I've had the privilege of serving in the finance ministry for several years. My wife and I had a journey where we started taking classes, and it was a really cool thing because it was her idea to take the first class, and it just sort of spun from there. And the next thing you know, we were serving in the ministry. So yes, I have the privilege of helping other people now with their finances to tighten up or create their budget. It's been a beautiful journey.
Oh, that's wonderful. I know there's a lot more to what you do, and we'll probably delve into that a little bit more. But for today, thanks for being here. You're going to be helping us with the budget.
Yes.
But before we get into the budget, just the other day while we were pre-planning for this show, Walter revealed some interesting information about himself to us, and I have implored him, if you wouldn't mind, Walter, to share with our listening audience about your great-grandma?
Great-grandmother, yes.
Okay.
So just to give it a little bit of context, I never knew where my family roots were. My mom and dad got married right out of high school. I lost communication with my dad because my mom and dad divorced before I was even 2 years old. So there was always this kind of yearn for, where did I come from? Who are my people? And a few years ago, I learned that a descendant of one of the 110 Africans that came over on the very last transatlantic slave ship. This was in 1860, right before emancipation. My great-great-grandmother, Matilda McCreer, was actually on that ship. She was a 2-year-old baby. It's staggering when I think about it. But she actually grew up to be the oldest living survivor from that ship. So she's a part of history.
Yeah.
So when I first learned about this, it was just kind of awesome because the McCreer name is something that I know, but I didn't know where it came from. Her name originally was Abake. I learned that recently as well. I always wanted to know what part of Africa I came from. Never knew. I did Ancestry.com several years ago. And the highest concentration of my DNA comes back to the exact area where she was from, Nigeria or Benin. The other part that was kind of puzzling to me was the European part. So I had a percentage that's German as well. And I come to find out that she was common law married to a full-blooded German guy. She had 14 kids. Well, my great-grandfather was the baby, Thomas McCreer. So it just answered a lot of questions. It's been such a journey with that alone, just figuring out her story and how it all ties together back to us.
That's amazing. And for those who are maybe a little more interested in this story, you said there were some shows that have been done on this now, right?
Yes. So there's a Netflix show. I think it's called Returning Home. And then there's a show more so about the quest to find the ship that they came in on.
What was the name of the ship?
The name of the ship is called the Clotilda. The Mayer family in Mobile, very prominent family at the time in the steamboat industry. The patriarch of the family made a bet about being able to bring in some Africans, even though slavery was basically abolished. He made the bet, created the ship, and it was a small vessel that was meant to kind of be fast and to kind of not even look like a slave ship. They went to the Ivory Coast. Of course, the Africans that were brought in was 110, and they sailed into Mobile July 7th, July 8th. I think they touched land for the first time on July the 8th. But in order to get rid of the evidence, because he didn't want to be punished, they burned the ship. And for several years, nobody knew where the ship was. It was all this talk about the Africans that came in, and they came in on the ship, but nobody knew where the ship was. And then the show, one of the documentaries is about discovering where the ship is. It's before they had a team of divers that came in to figure out through using sonar technology, and they found it. So that was all part of what the show was tracking.
Wow, you never know what you're going to get when you listen to this show. But that's that is all part of life. That's all part of this. So thank you so much, for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And we'll, at some point, we'll probably like to hear a little bit more, about that.
Sure.
But continuing her legacy is where we are right now.
Yeah.
Because she did a lot of awesome things. And we are trying to help continue that. And I guess the focus of this show is on our finances, helping with that. Tying that back into the budget, I'd like you to explain to our audience what a budget is and why a budget.
So a budget, simply put, is a game plan. It's your ability to earmark or assign every dollar to a specific purpose. A zero budget is where you take all of your income minus your expenses to equal zero. This is best because it allows you to control your finances and where everything is going. And it's so much better because, just like you said, no matter how much money you make or how little money you make, if you have a budget, you have that game plan, then you're set up for success. You can do the things that you are targeting because you have some way to track.
It only makes sense that to handle your finances, you would have a budget. Why do you think most people don't have or operate a budget?
I think historically, especially in our community, people like to spend the money however they feel. Most of us don't want to feel like we don't have money, even when we don't.
So it's also an emotional thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, one of the bigger things that we do when we sit down to coach somebody to create a budget is we talk about your outlook on finances, on money, starting from how you grew up. A lot of times you can grow up with no money and come out of that with a serious spiritual issue, a poor mentality. You make money, but you hold on to it so tight that you're not fulfilling the purpose that God meant for you to on how to use that money. I think it's more spiritual than anything, or when people don't want to have a budget. So you have to understand what that issue is and figure out a way to target that and to get around that. Because without a budget, you have no plan. It can go so many ways bad.
That's awesome. Because I know when we say we're talking about a budget, people are expecting you to launch into numbers and things like that. Right. But you're saying the first thing we need to do is sit back and go over our history, our journey with money.
Yes. So important. We start that way because we know that's the best way to get a person ripe and ready for doing the mechanics of the budget itself. If you understand how you view money and what your issues are, then you have a better chance to get a complete, concise budget.
So can you share some of the different views that in your experience people have about money when they come to you?
Oh, yeah. I can start with myself, honestly. I grew up pretty poor. We didn't have a lot of means. A lot of it was attributed to just my mom being young, and my grandmother, her mom, passed when she was 17 years old. So she didn't really have a mom beyond that age and a missing father. So she didn't really understand how to deal with finances. She kind of just did everything by the seat of her pants. And so without much money and with no plan, I just experienced a lot of struggle. It made me wish that we had more. It made me want to figure out what I could do to not live like that as an adult. The first thing I thought about was just working. And so I started working as soon as, somebody would give me a job. I think the first thing I ever tried to do was go door to door. I found some little pebble rocks that I wanted to sell to my neighbors. And so it's funny because people would answer the door for a 7-year-old kid. Most people thought it was kind of peculiar because, this is just rocks. And I remember one person said, "What am I supposed to do with these?" And I said, "Well, they're decorative. You can put them in a fish tank or you can put them with your plants." And that was something that I just made up on the cuff. I just wanted to have money. I think, that was a poor mentality from a standpoint of not having. And then I think about my wife. She grew up in more of a well-to-do kind of family. Her family is from rural Arkansas, so they grew up dirt poor too. Her mom and dad did. But because her mom and dad got away, went to college, they did pretty good for themselves. They were in a high-end suburb in Dallas, Texas, Plano, Texas. But they were on the very bottom of the scale. So she was going to school with kids that had Porsches and BMWs, and she had her little beater in high school. And so that's a different spiritual issue that could still lean to the whole poor mentality. She never wanted to create a budget. It was something that I always wanted, but because she didn't, it was just one of the things that we fought about early in our marriage. And so I was so happy when God answered my prayers and she wanted to take a financial class at church. But it wasn't until, so we took the first financial class, Dave Ramsey, and it was awesome because it's bare bones. It teaches you about finances from a bare bones standpoint. But then we took another class, Compass. And that's where we got into the spiritual issues. It's over 2,000 verses in the Bible about finances. It's one of those things that God knew that we might struggle with, and he wanted to help us. But that class really helped me unlock the spiritual issues that I had and that she had. It's helping us uncover the same thing with a lot of other people.
That's wonderful. So you touch on a very important point on working lockstep with your partner. Because again, before just diving into the numbers, like you said, in your case, you wanted to do the budget and she didn't want to do the budget. And one person doing the budget, actually, that's not going to work, right? That's not going to work. So what do you do if you want to create a budget and your spouse is not willing?
Well, first of all, you got to pray. It's one of the first things that I did. I had to make some concessions because it was just an area where she didn't want to sit down and talk about it. I think the easiest thing to do is to offer somebody else to pour into your spouse. For me, it was, a course at church, and she had to come up with the idea on her own. It wasn't something that I recommended. So that's what worked in my situation. If I were being proactive, that's exactly what I would have done. Yeah. I would have said, "Hey, babe, let's take a class. Or you might just take a stab at it. Hey, babe, I know you don't want to do this, but how about you start? How about you create a budget on your own for us both? And that's our starting point. I think if your spouse doesn't want to do it, you have to give them a sense of control in order to motivate them.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Because if I, to be transparent, in our case as well, it was similar. Not my spouse was not on the same page as I was, but we had to create a shared vision.
Right.
When we had a shared vision of this is what we wanted for ourselves and for our family, and looking into the future, we realized this was the only way we were going to get there.
Yes.
And we also did a financial class.
Yeah.
We also did a financial class. Like you said, it's important when you have, usually if your spouse won't listen to you, hopefully you have, like we've shared on some of the previous episodes, you need to have a mentor in your life, somebody that can speak into your life, into the life of your spouse, somebody that you both will listen to. So hopefully there's someone there who can say pretty much the same things you've been saying, but since it's not coming from you, they're more receptive, to hearing it. So having a shared vision also helps with getting you in line to say, look, we need a budget in order to be able to get to, to this place. So that's fantastic. All right. So you've talked with this person has come. They've sat down with you. Hopefully they've come with their spouse and you guys have gone a little deeper into how they view money and stuff.
Yes.
Then what's the next step?
Well, after you determine your outlook, you identify your own spiritual issues. The best thing to do to start is track. You do tracking. And when I say tracking, I mean whatever tool you have or that you're comfortable with. Even if that's pen and paper, you track every single expense, every single piece of income that comes in. And what we recommend is you do it for 30 days to start. And so by doing that, you would be surprised how aware you become, especially if you hold to the integrity of doing it every step of the way. By the time you get maybe even a week or two in, you start to realize where you're wasting money. You see yourself and you become aware and conscious to a point where you become open for creating that budget. Once you do the tracking, you come back and you have the basic components because you know what your income is. All sources, side hustle, alimony, child support, whatever you have, investments, you write it down. It's part of your plan. Same thing for your expenses, no matter what they are. Of course, your housing, your utilities, student loans, whatever you have, if it's written down, then it becomes part of your plan. And so once you account for all of your sources of income and account for your expenses, you do the same thing we talked about before. You subtract your expenses from your income until it becomes zero. By doing that, you have an assignment for every dollar. And the easiest thing to see is there may be some areas you can cut back because you've been tracking and you understand from a guideline standpoint where everything should go. Yeah, I mean, these are the same steps that we take with everybody, whether you're single or married, divorced, whatever. You have to track before you can be accurate about your budget.
That's great. So you basically for 30 days, just write down or in an Excel spreadsheet, or if you've got an app for those who are more tech savvy, just add up what you spent on your rent, your mortgage, your utilities, what you spend on food, which is the one that usually, when that adds up, you're like, I did what?
Right. Food and Starbucks.
Food, because we spend, $10 here, $15 here. You've got that TV subscription, that other subscription, and they just, so add them all up. Mm-hmm. And so now you're ready to prepare your budget. So you've got your income, maybe your main job. And like you said, if you have side hustles, add all that in. Let's say they total, $5,000 a month, just to make the math easy, and then so you have that at the top, and then you start subtracting all those expenses.
Yes.
And hopefully there's something left over when you've subtracted everything. Mm-hmm. And so let's say we subtract everything and there's $500 left over because you said it needs to be zero, right? Mm-hmm. So what do I do with that 500?
Well, first of all, let me take a step back. When you are doing the budget and you realize what you're spending, the very first thing you do is account for the 10% tithe. I mean, you do that off the top. Some people struggle with that idea, but it's what you start with. The other thing that I like to say, but this depends on the person and it depends on the situation, is saving 10%, paying yourself. Now, your other expenses, are extremely important. Food, you have to eat, you have to have shelter. You get all the way to the end, and like you said, if there's money left over, then you have a decision to make. What do you care most about after you cover the requirements? You do what God says, you do what's the best benefit for your long-term goal. But if saving is important to you, then you save that money. It's what I would. My wife would say, spend it. But that's what a budget does for you. It gives you the control so that at the end of the day, those extra dollars you can spend on something that's important to you, especially you if you're an individual and you guys together if you're a couple.
But the important thing here is if you have something left over, you don't just leave it there. You have to give it something to do. Whether you save it for something long-term, whether you save it for something in the near future, or whether you want to spend it or give it, or whatever it is, you just have to assign something to it. Otherwise, it just disappears.
Oh, my God. I'm glad you hit that point because assigning it gives it somewhere to go. If it doesn't have anywhere to go, it's going to slip through the cracks, no matter what the amount is, big or small.
So what do you do if you've listed all your expenses and you don't have enough income to cover everything?
Yes, another common scenario. Well, the best thing to do is to do the opposite. You have to figure out where you got to cut back. And by having a budget and having guidelines, like this is how much I should be spending on housing, this is how much I should be spending on food, then you know where you need to cut back. Once you have that plan or the idea, you keep cutting back until you get right back to that zero. It's still an effective tool. You won't know. You can look at your finances and see all these transactions and think, oh my God, where's my money going? I make so much money, or I make only a little money, but I'm only spending less. Why is it coming back to a deficit? But again, there's a little bit of fat in everybody's budget. You just have to focus on it. And you have to do it according to priority.
Excellent. What tools would you recommend to someone who is starting a budget for the first time? Are there some simple apps you would recommend? I use an Excel spreadsheet. Mine is very simple, very basic. I've done it enough now that I actually have a budget for the year because things are very similar.
Yes.
It doesn't change much once you've done it. You just have to tweak a little bit of, things for the different months. So it's almost the same every month. But what would you recommend?
Honestly, pen and paper still works. Not a lot of people use it, but I think it just gives you the freedom to just write it out and to place dollar amounts in the categories a little bit easier. Now, I'm like you. I like the Excel spreadsheet because it's a powerful tool. It's easy to maintain. You can even use Google Docs if you are a couple because you both have access to it. But there's a ton of so many tools that are kind of comparable to that. If you are somebody that likes to track, using your phone, there's a ton of those tools. I wish I had a list where I could just pop them off.
I'm sure our listeners can just Google that. I know a lot of spreadsheets pop up, but apps themselves, I'm sure there are quite a few out there.
There are.
Yeah. So, but you did mention something there about the Google Docs where your wife or your spouse you can both view it together.
Yes.
So first of all, who should do the budget out of you and your spouse? Because usually we find that one person is better than it at the other, but sometimes the one who's not as good at it may be the one who wants to do it.
Yeah. It's funny how that works. In my situation, ironically, I was always the person that was helping my mom, my sister with finances. And when I got married, I wanted to be that for my wife. She did not want that. It was the biggest resistance because she's like, don't bring your finances and numbers over here with me.
Oh, boy.
So, but you know what? She's the one that maintains our spreadsheet.
Really?
Yes. And I think the main reason is because that sense of control. Once she got the hang of it, and because my wife is she's a stickler for organization. So, her job is a project manager. By trade, she's always responsible for keeping people on time and tracking things. So it works out that she has control of the spreadsheet. The other thing is you have to have regular updates. Once you set the budget, if it's not a fluid thing, then it could still defeat the purpose. You have to meet on a regular basis. You have to be prepared for irregular expenses. Some expenses are quarterly or maybe annually. And so there has to be tweaks in there. I think the person that's stronger financially could be the one to maintain it. But I think it's better when the person that's not as financially strong maintains it. I think it gives an extra layer of power to that person.
That's quite unique. So in your case, the person who didn't want to do a budget to start off with, when you guys got on track, is the one handling the budget.
Isn't that great? Yes.
Talk about a win-win.
Yeah.
Some people struggle with staying on track with their budget. They set it up, it looks good, but then they find that, they either forgot something or they underestimated somewhere or some surprise popped up that kind of messes it up. And sometimes when it's messed up a little bit, they just throw everything out of the window. What would you advise folks to do in order to stick to the budget?
Great question. So what I would say is continue your tracking. 30 days it's a good starting point, and you can create your budget that way. But you have to see how you did after you create the budget. You have to figure out what you budgeted for and what you actually spent. So we have a little tool. It's a spreadsheet that we help people with when they're first starting out. This is what you assigned those monies to go to, but how much did you actually spend in that category? As long as you are looking at your actuals after the fact, then you can tweak along the way so your budget stays fluid. It gives you the opportunity to get better and better because the accuracy is closer to what you actually do. The other thing is by having a spouse, your wife, your partner, you have an opportunity to have some accountability. It's not just you looking at your finances and what you spent. Somebody else is there. Now, that can be a source of contention, of course, but if it's done right, oh my God, you have the power of two. And the other thing is, if you are struggling with this, any of the listeners, I would recommend you get into a financial class. I represent the Money and Wisdom Finance Ministry from Victory Church, but we offer all types of classes, workshops, and one-on-one budget coaching as well. And when you have a budget coach, somebody that can look at your finances alongside with you, then it's even easier to stay accountable. You have to have that accountability in order to be successful with your budget.
That's great. So if you have a spouse, that could stand as your accountability partner. Mm-hmm. In some cases, both of you may need an external mentor as your accountability person. But then if you're single, you definitely want to get an accountability partner.
Yes. As a single person, you typically know somebody that's strong financially. It could be an aunt, a mentor, and, invite them into your finances. It's just a good way because we just do so much better when we have accountability. It doesn't matter what the topic is. Accountability just allows you to stay in the zone without getting off track. And then, of course, a coach, a budget coach, it's really the top of the food chain because you have somebody that's a trained person that will help you see inside your finances and unlock your potential in the places where you just never had any control or guidelines.
Wow, Walter, thank you so much. You've given us so much knowledge and wisdom here. But before I let you go, I want to ask, in your budget or in our budgets, you've mentioned tithing, of course, saving. You gotta save. But is there anything else that you think that people neglect putting into their budgets that actually should be in there?
Well, I think most of the time people don't realize that a budget is not really meant to confine you. It gives you permission to spend the things that you care about. Hey, if your wife likes shoes and purses, she can have a shoe budget and a purse budget. A budget can be something that's fun if you allow it to be. And then you don't feel bad about it because it's part of your plan. You know you're on track. You're still tithing. You're still saving. You're still trying to meet goals for short, midterm, and long term, but you have some fun. Yeah, I think that's a common misconception. People think, budget, that means I'm not going to get to spend my money at all in any way that I like. But actually, you do. It gives you the permission and the authority to do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Are there any last parting words that you'd like to share with our listeners when it comes to this or any topic?
I think this is great, what you're doing. It's so important to our community and people in general, because people don't pay attention to finances. If we could tackle this, there's so much of an opportunity to not only live healthy from a financial standpoint, but to generate generational wealth. It's been an important thing for me since I was a kid to be able to do that. Just being able to pass something down to my kids so that they don't have to start from ground zero. Oh my God, if we just would do that, the exponential effect of that just would be crazy. So I feel blessed and fortunate to be in the position that I am today. You know, being a corporate person and then doing business on the side and coming to a place where I could be focused on being a business owner. The income potential just there's no ceiling there. And then being able to have the support of my wife saying, hey, babe, go for it, do it. And now we're growing in all kinds of ways, just across the board. So when you have a budget, these are the things that become possible because the plan is in place and the money will be there to back up the plan as long as you control it.
Walter, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. That was my interview with Walter Bell. I hope you've been inspired to track and create your budgets if you're not doing so already. Or for those who had questions on your budget, I hope they were all answered for you today. If not, shoot us an email and we'll be happy to answer those questions as well. That's all we have for you today. My name is Toxio Gunyemi. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.